Welcome to episode 370 of the Postal Hub Podcast. I'm Ian Kerr. It's 10 years since the Postal Hub Podcast was launched. Launched upon the unsuspecting ears of the postal and delivery world is one way of looking at it, I suppose. Anyway, to mark the occasion, I've invited a range of experts and industry leaders to come on the podcast and share their perspectives on how the postal and delivery world has changed over the past 10 years, and maybe have a little bit of a look towards the future as well. In this episode, I'll be talking with Holger Winklbauer, the CEO at IPC, Peter Summers, who you will all recall is the former chief executive at Emirates Post, and before that held senior leadership positions at bpost, and Derek Osborn will join me at the end as well. Derek needs no introduction, so I won't introduce him. But you all know who I'm talking about here. Coming up over the next couple of weeks, I will also be speaking with Achim Dernwald. He's the Group Area Managing Director for Central Europe at GLS Group. Kate Muth, Executive Director at IMAG. Brodie Bueller, the CEO of Escher Group. Kathy Morrow-Robertson, the Founder and Chief Analyst at Logistics Trends and Insights. Mike Richmond, VP Returns at Blue Yonder. And Mark Fallon, the President and CEO of the Berkshire Company. And from all those names, that just gives you an idea of the range of topics that we're going to be talking about over the next couple of weeks. I've decided to split it into 3 episodes instead of giving you one gigantic episode. So we'll be speaking with these people over the next couple of weeks, and they'll be sharing their perspectives, their insights. Oh, I just said insights, like it's a LinkedIn post. Let's go full LinkedIn, everybody. I'm thrilled to share these insights from insert AI-generated text here. Okay, enough of this nonsense. Let's get into this episode featuring, as I said, Holger Winklbauer, CEO of IPC, Peter Summers, and Derek Osborn. Joining me is Peter Summers. Peter is known to many of you. Peter is the former CEO of Emirates Post. Peter was telling me before we hit record that he spent, did you say 15 years at bpost?
Almost 15 years, 14
Almost 15 years. And you've got SprintPack, and you've got more recently experience in electric mobility. So I think, Peter, it'd be really interesting to hear your perspective on what's changed over the past 10 years. How would you compare things from 10 years ago to where we are now, or the transformation journey? Maybe we should term it in that respect. Tell us about the transformation journey you've witnessed over the past 10 years.
Ian, before we start, I want to congratulate you on 10 years of the Postal Hub podcast, because it's 10 years of bringing insights of the industry and also thought leadership towards everybody's interested. But coming back to the question, what has changed over the last 10 years in the landscape? Well, I think the biggest change is the e-commerce growth. Yeah, if we look back at 2015, maybe $1 trillion of total sales in e-commerce. Today, $5 trillion of e-commerce sales. So that's a big change, and that, of course, was driving the whole transformation of postal operators over the last 10 years, adapting to what the new normal is of delivering the parcels, all the challenges it brings, and certainly also the cross-border challenges, because you have the domestic ones, and that's it's not easy to do it, but it's easier to do it, to just deliver a parcel from A to B within your own country. But when it comes to cross-border, that's a lot more difficult with the whole supply chain. And we had many, I think, bumps on the road. And if there's one that I can mention is COVID. And everybody was talking about COVID. But I was here, I just landed as the CEO of Emirates Post when COVID kicked in. And it completely transformed the whole landscape. Online e-commerce was not existing at all, and suddenly it happened. And now, if you look here, still in Dubai, what is the new normal here is a 20-minute delivery for almost everything. So not only the e-commerce, traditional e-commerce from retailer started, but also the Q-commerce kicked off with the Deliveroos and the Talabats and the Kareems, and now everything you can purchase online is delivered in 20, even your Starbucks coffee. Imagine coffee is delivered to your place in 20 minutes. And that's how a market which was not an easy market and not a traditional e-commerce market, because we all know the UK was one of the first, and the US and China and all of that. Europe followed. The Middle East transformed a lot. And that's where you see that the competition is high. And I believe for postal operators over the last 10 years, it became clear that where initially the thought was, we are the only one who can do it, that's not true. Yeah, there is so much competition, and certainly with the Amazons and others who have critical mass doing their own delivery now, that proves that the jury is out and that the challenges for the postal operators are not yet solved all. So they need to deliver to innovate, they need to deliver to transform. They have the challenge of declining mail all the time. And well, the recent decision of Post Denmark to just stop delivering mail is also a milestone in the industry. It's happening, and it will happen more. So yeah, there is a lot that changed over the last 10 years. But as I said, I think the main driver of all the change was a dramatic growth of the e-commerce, not only domestically, but also cross-border.
Just one more question then while I've got you on the line there, Peter. You've mentioned about the transformation of the Middle East in terms of e-commerce. And I think that's really interesting, going from wherever it was to having 20-minute delivery as a, could we call it standard, or as a common expectation. What's happened there in terms of the delivery modes? Because this is something that I think is particularly interesting. We're talking about transforming from residential to a mix of residential and out-of-home delivery. We're talking about letting people choose where they get their deliveries. What are you seeing there in the Middle East with regard to that customer choice of where they receive their e-commerce deliveries?
Yeah, very good question, and also very particular here, because where you see that in Europe, let's say the choices were, okay, home delivery, pick up in a postal point, pick up in a PUDO point, the parcel locker business, which is growing dramatically. None of this happened here. They sticked to home delivery. Why is that? Because you can deliver to any place safe. Yeah, almost every apartment building has security. Yeah, so you can deliver in front of the door. You have to give consent. You have to tell the last mile provider, okay, you can deliver in front of my door. It stays there. It will not disappear. It's not possible in Europe like that. Yeah, you have the safe neighbor delivery and all these things, but just put it in front of the house, I don't think it will work. Here it works. Yeah, in the big villas, they have their maids and so on. So there's always somebody at home, or you can deliver in front of the door. And that makes life a little bit more easy. Also with the heat in summer, people are not going to take their car to drive to a PUDO point to pick up a parcel or stand in line at the postal operator. All of that didn't really happen. You see some small initiatives of parcel lockers or PUDOs coming up. We tried it ourselves at Emirates Post, but to be honest, there is no need. If you can deliver safe to the house in front of the door or to the people's houses, that's the most convenient way of delivering a parcel.
Always interesting to get your perspectives on things, Peter, especially with your experience in Europe and abroad, and especially in the Middle East there. Peter Summers, thank you very much for joining us on this special episode of the Postal Hub Podcast.
Thank you. Welcome.
I'm joined now by Holger Winklbauer. Holger is the CEO at IPC, International Post Corporation. And Holger, you've been on the Postal Hub podcast a number of times over the last 10 years, and other members of the IPC team have been on the podcast. And one of the continuing topics has been cross-border e-commerce. And from your perspective at the IPC, what have you observed over the last 10 years, in particular with regard to cross-border e-commerce and what it means for the postal and delivery sector?
Ian, first of all, hello, and thank you very much for inviting me again for your famous podcast. I feel honored to be here today, and congratulations to your 10 years. It's amazing. Everyone knows your podcast, and I'm happy to contribute here as well. The changes of the last 10 years, well, let's start where we have been 10 years ago. 10 years ago, we got all these bags from China, these plastic bags, small bags where the labels were glued around it. And the postal industry and the Western world were flooded with those items. And there were machines invented and installed which were called crocodile, because a flap would open and these bags, which would not be able to handle otherwise, would just fall into a hole in order to be sorted in the sorting centers of the post. So the world was very much concerned about these volumes coming hugely from China. Largely, AliExpress was on the rise, and it was all done on the agreement of the postal world, of the UPU agreements, which were more related to documents and having the population abroad. But it was used for this new thing, the online shopping. These days were kind of then a bit interrupted. On one side, the Chinese were kind of seeing the opportunity and for asking for more. So I remember that I think it was in 2017 or 18, I was in China, and there was Jack Ma on the stage, and we were saying we need 78 hours cross-border delivery for our customers. That's what they expect. And we also need to invest heavily in robots for our warehouses. That was a time that was a booming time, while on the other side, we had an American president who was kind of negotiating with the UPU about the fares, and rightly so, saying that it cost more to transport from Iowa to Texas than to transport from China to Texas. And that was seen as an unfair practice. And then there was a negotiation going on leaving the UPU or having better rates. And the result, everyone knows, was then done in 2019 when the self-declared rates for the US were agreed for 2020, and for 2021, the rest of the world was allowed to the self-declared rates. That did, and then I come back to the plastic bags I was talking about, that did lead to a significant downturn of the volumes, continued, added by the effect of Corona crisis. The planes have been grounded. The network was not there as it used to be before. And the result of that, as we are looking at it today, is that the China Post volumes have been going down by 90% or more. So these bags where we used to be flooded through the postal system did not exist anymore in the same quantity. They were less than a tenth of what we used to be in the peak. But if I look at the delivery times, I think that is also a very important one. I mean, before Corona, we had in the postal chain, which was used largely for e-commerce, we had about 4 weeks into the Western world. You would receive your goods when you have forgotten what you have ordered, and you would be surprised what's in the item when you open it up. By Corona, it went up to 6 to 8 weeks somehow to the delivery. And now what we see, and the big trend, is that the supply chains have been, due to those two effects, I would say, higher prices on one side for the delivery on postal items, the grounding of the fleet, which the air network has not really recovered fully since Corona crisis, that we see other means of transportation. We see that the postal flow in the cross-border, specifically from China to the rest of the world, is not there anymore. It's almost insignificant. We see that other means of transportation, consolidators, forwarders, and airlines are stepping into that business and helping out. We see one important trend, which is forward inventory. If I take, for example, the Liège hub we have here, which is used in different ways, but it's used in the way of getting closer to the customers and getting close to the 78 hours. So fast-moving items are largely stored there, or are they going through those points? And then on the other side, we see that this market has also been conquered, the e-commerce cross-border delivery market has also been conquered by the e-platforms itself. To name Amazon at the beginning, who had in the last 10 years installed several domestic delivery networks. And we see that a player like Temu, which was no one 2 years ago, no one would know about it 2 years ago, all of a sudden is present. According to our research, they are only 1% behind Amazon, the biggest, in the share of volumes. And what they are doing, they're also very much working on the controlling the supply chain by themselves, and they're handing over in the last mile to local providers, delivery providers, meaning that the Post or others would receive those volumes. So I would say, if I look at these trends, these are significant trends which have changed postal world a lot. The Post, considering the different flows, and they try to play a role in that current situation.
And what's really interesting about all of that, Holger, is that there's a sense that this is a continuing story, isn't it? Whilst you've talked so much about the history of what has happened over the last 10 years, this is very much a continuing story, and there will continue to be changes and developments in cross-border e-commerce and logistics and that postal flows, like you were saying. It's a really interesting time to be in the postal sector. I know I've been saying that for 10 years, haven't I? But it's an interesting time to be in the postal sector. Holger, thank you very much for your insights today, and thank you for your contributions over the last 10 years to the Postal Hub podcast. Holger Winklbauer, CEO at the IPC, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
I'm joined by Derek Osborn. Derek's known to many, if not all of you. He's published various books on the postal sector over the years. He hosts some excellent workshops. There's the delivery workshop. There's the retail and customer touchpoints workshop. There's the small posts workshop. I'm sure I've missed some others. Derek, and you can find out about all of these. Here's the plug. I'm doing the plug now, Derek. Go to plefora, plefora.co.uk, and you'll find out more about all the things that Derek does in the postal sector. And Derek, it was 10 years ago, back in 2015, we had the delivery workshop in Vienna, hosted by Austrian Post. So just thinking back to 10 years ago, Derek, what do you think was happening back then, really, in the postal world, in the delivery world?
Thank you, Ian. Well, 10 years ago, I was looking back at the thought leadership book that I actually published around about that time, called Reinventing the Post, Changing Postal Thinking. And really at that time, the focus, I recall, was very much about having to change our thinking, change our way of looking at the postal industry, which had not changed for many years, which was still the hangover of the letter monopoly, the traditional legacy post that we all knew and all that. But there were lots of changes afoot. Not quite the full digital disruption, but plenty of market changes and enough to start changing the culture, the thinking more commercial culture rather than the traditional public service situation. The USO was still very much a big matter of debate, how to deal with it, how to manage it, and the conflict between the public service and the commercial operation. And obviously, quite a lot of customer-orientated new innovations were starting to come in lots of different ways. And that was the sort of climate of a lot of change, a lot of uncertainty as well, perhaps, because nobody could quite see which way it was going at that stage.
That culture change, that was a big thing. I really do remember that, because we were grappling globally and in our individual markets with the entrance of competitors that weren't burdened with the historical, whether it's everything from technical legacy systems through to the USO and the mindset of being potentially a public service organisation. It was a big sense of change at the time.
And looking at the book at the time, there was a lot about that culture change, the leadership, how organisations would have to be able to react more quickly to things, because traditionally it had been huge business cases, low risk initiatives, taking time to sort things out. But there was increasingly the pressure was to make quick decisions and to move faster, but nobody quite knew which way to go. And there were lots of different analyses about which was the future direction. Obviously, we all knew that the letter market was declining, but nobody knew quite how fast and where that was leading. And the digital opportunities were not yet proven and were a bit unsure, and obviously there was quite a lot of trust issues still to be resolved at that stage in terms of the new technology. Obviously we're quite a little bit further on now, but at that stage it was sort of a turmoil, if I could put it that way. In my book I mentioned not the postal landscape, I would say the seascape, because it was so lots of currents and tides swishing in all directions.
There certainly is a fair degree of inertia when it comes to the postal sector. It's an object moving in one direction. It can be very difficult to turn it. Are there any other observations from that time or any comparisons that you can share with us, Derek?
Well, I think reflecting back and looking at where we are now, I think the interesting reflection is that we are still evolving. We're still here, which a lot of people said that we might not be. I say we, the postal industry. There was a lot of doomsters saying that before too long, the industry would just be eradicated, would be out of reach altogether. And obviously in between, during that time, we've had COVID. People recognize the value of door-to-door delivery in a unique situation. And I think that's just about managed to keep the postal industry in the area where people recognize the value of it, and although not in the traditional way. And so now it's just trying to reposition the post rather than reinvent it, reposition it. It's not diversification anymore, but reposition it so that it's providing value-added services, not quite the diversification that everybody originally anticipated, but it's all now in the digital world, although with the physical distribution that is still very much part of the DNA of the post. But the jury's still out. We're still on the journey, and the journey is not quite clear where it's going. There's lots of bigger issues in wider sectors, and once you're on a digital platform, you're in a completely different commercial jungle to compete.
Now, Derek, the next delivery workshop will be held in Bonn in the first week of June, hosted by our good friends at Deutsche Post. If people want to find out more about this workshop or the other workshops that you coordinate, how can they find out more?
They should just go to my website, Plethora, Plefora, Postal Logistics Events Fora, plethora.co.uk, and they can find out about the events. And we should be having this delivery benchmarking workshop, which will be the latest and best ideas to be found by comparing with your colleagues who are facing the same challenges. It's always a rich exchange of ideas. That'll be in the first week of June in Bonn. And then soon to come will be the retail or customer touchpoints, customer experience workshop to be announced shortly.
Derek Osborn, thank you very much for joining us on the Postal Hub podcast today. Next week on the Postal Hub podcast, the 10-year anniversary special continues. I'll be speaking with Achim Dernwald, Group Area Managing Director for Central Europe at GLS Group, Kate Muth, Executive Director at IMAG, and Brodie Bueller, CEO at the Escher Group. To make sure that you don't miss any of these episodes, to make sure that you know what I mean. You all know what I'm going to say anyway. I'm going to say sign up. I'm going to say subscribe. So subscribe to the podcast on your favourite podcast platform. Subscribe to the email newsletter. Go over to thepostalhub.com and you can subscribe there. Follow the links. It'll say sign up or email or something. I can't remember now. I haven't got the website open in front of me like a professional would. Anyway, go over there, thepostalhub.com, and sign up. And I'm on LinkedIn. The Postal Hub's on LinkedIn. You just have to follow me. That's nice. That way you get a bit of my stuff in your LinkedIn feed instead of some AI generated nonsense that someone's thrilled to share with you. If you want to email me, my email address is ian@thepostalhub.com. I'm Ian Kerr. Thanks for listening in, and I look forward to your company next time on the Postal Hub podcast.